self-worth. What happens to those children who see images of other people as great heroes? But the best that they can see is images of them as drug addicts, as people lying on the ground with body bags being pulled over their bodies, as worthless, ignorant buffoons. What happens to that child? That child will say, I will reject all of those images, and I will accept any image that looks good to me. So if you as parents don't understand your obligation to your children to protect their minds, their fragile minds from the negative images in the media, then your children will continue to turn on you. As a parent, I felt that it was my responsibility to do what I could to help my daughter, to bring her to the lectures, to introduce her to Doc Ben and Dr. Clark and Asa Hilliard and Lynn Jeffries and Rosalind Jeffries and Frances Welsing and Shashi McIntyre, so that she could see strong African men and women and feel proud about herself. So on one occasion, she kind of threw me for a loop when she came home from school and said, Daddy, they're having a Halloween party at school, and I want to go to the Halloween party as Snow White. I had to stop and think about this. Now, why would she say she wanted to go as Snow White? And I remembered that the movie Snow White had just been re-released. So there were commercials running on television every day. There were advertisements in the newspaper every day. There were images on the back of the cereal boxes. So she is constantly being bombarded with these images, and it's my responsibility to tell my child, baby, if I'm going to allow you to participate in a pagan holiday, pagan celebration, then I'm going to at least let you dress up in a costume that will reinforce some sense of your cultural identity. So I remember going down to the store with my daughter to look for some costumes, and all I saw were images of Batman and Superman and Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, figments of other people's imagination, but nothing that would reinforce within the mind of my child some sense of self. So I said, well, no, I don't see anything here that I'm comfortable with. We will leave. But Daddy, I need a costume for the party. I said, baby, I will make you a costume. And as I'm driving home, I'm kicking myself in the butt. Now I'm thinking, you take these stands, you don't have time to make a costume, but you got to do something. And so I thought of images that I had seen on my travels to Kemet. I thought of appropriate female images for my daughter. So the image of Newt that I had seen in the ceiling of a tomb in the West Bank came to my mind. So I created the costume. Next slide shows you the costume that I made for my daughter. Took a leotard. I painted the sun in the leotard. I painted the stars on her body. She had a little purse with a name tag that said Newt. I drew a description of Newt and a brief definition as to who she was. And I said, baby, when you go to school, for that Halloween party, don't let anybody call you Nut. You are Newt, and you represent an African goddess. All right? Next slide shows you the inspiration for that and why this scene is so powerful, why we need to realize that there are images all around us that we can take, that we can modify to use for our own personal interests. Here's a painting of Newt that shows you this African goddess with her feet and her hands touching the earth and her body stretched across the sky. This is an image of Newt representing the nighttime sky. So here we see her mouth about to swallow the red disk of the sun as it sets in the western horizon. So the sun is now swallowed by Newt, swallowed by the sky, and it then moves through her body. Here you see the little stars in the nighttime sky. The sun moves through her body, and it emerges in the east now as a golden ball of light coming forth from the womb of this African goddess. I said, that is a powerful concept. It's powerful because our ancestors saw the sun as a symbol for God, and they had enough respect for their women to show a woman giving birth to God. Powerful information. powerful images that you all have at your fingertips. So what we've been doing every year since that point in time, while she still celebrated Halloween and they had Halloween parties at school, is that every year she went dressed as an African personality, all right? The next slide shows you an image of her. Let's see. This is when she went as Queen T, all right? Won first prize at the Halloween costume at school, all right? And what's so interesting is that as a result of our exchange, there are other sisters and brothers who are now coming to school, Halloween, dressed as African person. I saw a little brother come in one day as Imhotep, the first architect in history, all right? Queen Nzinga. We've got, see, stop and think about it. Why, what person in their right mind would allow their child to go out of the house dressed as a witch, dressed as a monster, dressed as Freddy Krueger, and then you wonder why your children are acting like beasts? You reinforce that madness. You have an opportunity every day to give your children something that they can hold on to, something that will allow them to resurrect their African personalities. I took my daughter to Egypt with me on one of my study tours in 1989. I took her because I wanted her to see what I had seen. I didn't want her to wait until she was 28 years old to begin to see the truth. I wanted to understand why Daddy was spending so much time traveling over in Kemet or traveling, lecturing to different people. And so what we did was, when we came back, my daughter was 8 when she made that trip to Kemet. And so what we did when we came back was to sit down and write about her experiences. And the end product was my daughter's book entitled My First Trip to Africa. All right? We made an extended homework assignment of that book. Worked on it every evening. We talked about what she had seen. We talked about why we went to Kemet. We talked about how we got there. We talked about what she did when she got back. And as a result of having written that book, my daughter, who is now 10, she was 8 when she wrote the book. My daughter now lectures. She's lectured with Dr. Clark in Cleveland, Ohio 2 years ago. She travels all over the country talking about her experiences as a young author. And so, my daughter and I have this working relationship. And that working relationship is my commitment to her that wherever you travel with me outside of the country, we're going to write a book about your experiences. And the proceeds from the sale of your book is going into a trust fund to pay for your college tuition. So the deal is this. It's very simple. Allow my daughter to keep 10% of the sales of her book, 10% of the honorariums that she receives, and she uses that money to pay for school-related expenses. She doesn't go out, don't buy no Nintendos in my house. You take that money, you want to take piano lessons? Okay, baby, you can take piano lessons. Your piano lessons cost $10 per half an hour, but you have got to pay for your piano lessons with the money that you earn. So there's no better feeling that comes over her at the end of that half an hour piano lesson when she reaches into her pocket and pays her piano teacher with her money, okay? So the deal is that we're working on our second book now. We went to West Africa this past summer, Ghana, Senegal, Gambia, and the Ivory Coast. We're working on our second book, which we'll have out by Kwanzaa, the end of the year. And the deal is by the time my daughter is 17, by the time she's ready for college, she'll have at least 6 books to her credit and $100,000 in the bank. Very realistic. I'm teaching my daughter the reality that she does not have to go to school to get a job. I'm teaching her she is a job. That is the reality, and that's how we've got to deal with our youth. Next slide, please. This issue is so vital. Let's have the lights, please. Let me kind of bring things to a close. This issue is important for us because, as I stated earlier, we're fighting for our lives. We're fighting for the lives of our children. We have a responsibility to see to it that they are properly educated. The information is available to you all. The information should be available to our children in the classroom. You're tax-paying citizens of the United States. Your money pays for those schools. So you have a right to insist that the books that are now available outside on the tables that the vendors have are books that need to be in the classroom, need to be taught to your children. We had an interesting experience with my daughter's book. A woman who lived in Bowie, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C., gave a copy of my daughter's book to her 10-year-old son. This brother went to school, did a book report on my daughter's book, turned it in to the teacher. The teacher later reprimanded this 10-year-old brother in front of the entire class and told him that his book report was unacceptable because it was entitled My First Trip to Africa, and the book report was about Egypt, and everybody knows that Egypt is not in Africa. 2 years ago. Fortunately for this young brother, he had a parent who was truly interested in his education. And when the son told the mother what happened, the mother came up to school, and I don't have to tell you, she went off on the principal, she went off on the teacher, she gave them both a history lesson and a geography lesson, had the teacher apologize to her son in the classroom, and insisted that it never happen again. You know, so when I was working on my latest publication, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, I wanted to design a publication that could be used for the classroom, a textbook, specifically for those teachers that want to teach about this information but don't have the books. Don't have the books? I use my skills as an artist, I use my knowledge of history, and design a book for you. I talked with Dr. Clark last June. We were at a conference in New Jersey last June, and Dr. Clark was asking me about the book, how the sales were going, and he mentioned to me that the book should be used in the textbook, in the classroom, and that he said, you know, you need to do a study guide for that because teachers don't like to do a lot of work. You know, so if you can do a study guide, then you can ensure that the book will be used by more teachers. So, never one to disrespect any advice that I get from Dr. Clark, I said, I'll work on it. During the summer, I had two brothers, two sisters and a brother, friends of mine, school teachers in the Washington area, work on a study guide. The study guide came out in January. Lesson plans, every chapter in the book, information that can be Xeroxed and passed out to the classroom, answers to the questions, all right? So there's no reason for people not to gain access to this information. We also just recently developed a videotape, and we put together what we refer to as a multimedia educational system, all right? So that we're developing information that can be used specifically for the classroom. Information that can be used in the classroom, information that can be used at home, information that can be used in the study group. So that there's no reason for us not to begin to access that information and then not to begin to use that information to liberate ourselves and our children. Sisters and brothers, we're at a very critical point in our history. So pleased to see that as one president is being buried in the United States, a new president is being resurrected in South Africa. We need to understand that we're about to see the nature of the world change. And the question that we have to ask is, where are we going to be when the world changes? I want to leave you with a poem from my first book, the Browder File. The poem is entitled Transition 13. And now that I have explained to you the symbolic and the spiritual significance of the number 13, hopefully you can interpret this poem as it was meant to be interpreted. Transition 13 states, in the beginning we knew not, and we studied, and we learned all there was to know, and we taught others. Then we forgot what we had learned, and then forgot that we had forgotten. Now we are taught by those who were once taught by us knowledge that we already have. So we study. We learn all there is to know.